Evening, everyone. It's this meeting was to start at 6 o'clock, so we're close. Actually, reconvene at 6. And I will provide some background just so you understand what our process is. We had a regular council meeting today, and a few weeks ago, we decided that we wanted to make an effort to provide people the opportunity to come in and ask to communicate with people in a way that was functional and convenient. You'll know if you've been watching. A number of years ago, the county has stopped having annual meetings, and it made good sense because there just weren't people attending. But we have seen over the last months that there is interest in what's happening in government, and we appreciate that. And we think it's very important that there's opportunities to help give direction on an interim basis. All of us here as councillors are here to serve us as ratepayers. And so we value the opportunity to meet together. So the official process is that we just recessed our meeting for a couple of hours this afternoon, and we'll reconvene now with a question period. And just for clarity, we have council meetings pretty well every 2 weeks, short of the odd one in between that gets canceled through the course of the year, but mostly every 2 weeks. And near the start of every meeting, we have a question period, an official question period, and we allocate a half an hour for that. Since most of us have been here, we've never used that because there haven't been questions. But for information purposes, you can come online or you can send a question if it's not convenient to be here in person, that council would respond to on a bi-weekly basis as part of our regular meetings. So I hope that clarifies what our process is here tonight. The rest of the business in our meeting was complete, so tonight is simply a question period. We call it a question period, but it's an opportunity for exchange, for people to ask questions, to raise issues that are important to them. And we most certainly appreciate your joining us here this evening. I don't know, Todd, do we have people online as well?
Yeah, so far we have 2. We did have 3 at one time, but we've dropped out 1.
Okay. And just for information, all of our public meetings are online, so if anyone is interested in and connected with the technology to watch meetings online, you're welcome to do that. And there are, as I said, that's a live opportunity to ask questions through the electronic media. So I provide that just for information, and that's why the format is the way it is here. I suppose if we had rented a hall to have a meeting like this, we'd be sitting around tables together. But this is an artificial gulf here. It doesn't mean a thing. And what I will say is that if you have questions or comments, we'll have a mic system, and we'll ask anyone who has a question to come to the mic, have a chair, and we would ask that your questions and comments be limited to 5 minutes if you can. You know, that's not a hard and fast rule. We're not overrun. We don't expect to be overrun by questions tonight, but we welcome all of them and hope we can provide reasonable answers and with regard to what's happening. Just to highlight a few things that are happening in the county, you'll probably be aware of the potable water system that happened about 10 years ago. The previous council initiated a second round of that, so that has now begun, and we've got something like 400 new hookups to be made over the next year or so. So that's a positive thing in terms of better utilization of the system that's in place to provide potable water throughout the county. I am quite happy and proud to give a lot of recognition to previous councils that have worked hard on our behalf across the district. I live at Gem, and I noticed that all of our communities are connected by good paved roads. I mean, the roads that we want paved aren't maybe all paved yet, but councils in the past worked together to make sure that roads got paved, and that's impressive. And we have remarkable fire and emergency services in most of our communities, and it's important to know that the county provides most of that also for our neighbors in Rosemary, Bassano, and Dutchess. We provide a lot of funding for that together. I mean, as ratepayers, we do that, and I think we're proud to be able to do that, and pleased to work with our partners. This afternoon, we had our financial statements presented to us and passed them for the previous year, and I just want to report that the county is in excellent financial shape in terms of benefit. You know, we're the benefactors of a rich resource and agricultural district. Certainly the resource development in our area makes a big contribution to our tax base, and that's helpful, and we've been able to use that funding with our partners in Brooks and the other municipalities to improve the quality of life for people in our area. And not only are the finances in good shape, but also we're proud of the team that works here at the county on our behalf, not only in terms of the finances, but certainly that, and they were well complimented today as part of our auditor's report to the county. And if there are some financial indicators that we tend to compare ourselves with similar counties, and by similar I mean maybe in land base, maybe in population, maybe in assessment. There is a variety of comparators that we typically compare ourselves to other counties, and I just want to say on behalf of you, because it's not anything I feel like we did, but we've had a very responsible council over many years that has set us up to be in good shape financially, and I can't say enough about that. That makes these chairs a lot easier to sit in. I can tell you that for a fact. So I didn't come here to talk a whole bunch. I lost my voice about a week ago, and there was a lot of people cheering about that, but it's starting to come back. But I will say that we're pleased that you've come this evening and welcome your questions, and we have staff here that can help to answer them if we as council can. I'm going to suggest that to begin with, we'll introduce ourselves and go around the room and introduce. We'll have a mic that comes around so we can all introduce ourselves, so we have a good idea of who's here tonight, and we get to know each other a little bit. So with that, unless there's other reporting that we need to do, any other councillors have things they want to say at the outset? Other than welcome, Neil, why don't you start and we'll go around the room.
Yeah, glad you all showed up. That's cool. I thought there'd be two people here. You surprised me. I'm Neil Johnson, Division 10.
Welcome, Amanda Philpott, Division 8.
Welcome, Ellen Unra, and I represent the countryside around the village of Rosemary.
Hi, I'm Greg Screever. I'm Division 5, Lake New Resort and Castles.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Chrisman. I'm from the west side of the county, Division 6.
Welcome again. I'm Arno Dirksen from GEM, Division 9 in the county in the North End.
Thanks for coming out. Matt Fensky, I'm the county's Chief Administrative Officer.
Good evening, Holly Johnson, Division 4, Scandia, Rainier, and Bow City.
Good evening, Adina Scandrip, Division 2.
Good evening and welcome, Dan Short from Division 1, Rolling Hills.
Hi, I'm Lynette Kopp. It's great to see so many of you here, and I represent the Division 3 Patricia Millicent area. Hello, Ariana Nielsen, Executive Assistant.
Hello, Todd Green, Director of Agriculture Services.
Lane Johnson, the Director of Corporate Services. Mark Harvick, Director of Municipal Services.
Do you want to rove with the mic there and get everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves?
Sean Dahl from Dutchess.
Terry Dahl from Dutchess.
Might have to speak right into that thing. It's
Terry Dahl from Dutchess.
Ian Zorb, One Tree.
Mike Dovachuk, I farmed in the Tilly in Brooks District.
Al Zagorski, I'm in Brooks.
speak right in.
Len Korthowski, I'm from Tilly, and we're neighbors to, I'm neighbors to Alex Zagorski. He's from Brooks.
See, we have online guests, so we need to allow them the privilege of knowing who's in the audience. Okay, thank you.
Sean Dahl from Dutchess.
Terry Dahl from Dutchess.
Ian Zorb from One Tree area.
Mike Dovachuk, Brooks area.
Al Zagorski, Brooks. Okay, the two guys to the left of me were neighbors. They say they're from Brooks, but I say I'm from Tilly, and my name is Len Korthowski.
Ray Torkelson from Tilly. Kevin Torkelson from Tilly.
Martin Shields from Brooks.
Okay, Martin.
Kevin Harris from the One Tree.
Mary Lou Bancy from Tilly.
And Roberta Fernell, our staff person sitting in the back there. Special welcome to Martin Shields. Thanks for coming tonight, Martin. We appreciate you being here. And if there's a lull in the action through the course of this evening, we'll invite Martin to give us an update as he's comfortable with. And if there's questions, I'm sure that'll be appropriate too. But for tonight, to start with, this will be about the county and any concerns you have with regard to the county. There's a fair bit of decorum here, and I do have some regular procedure around question period, but I don't think I need to read most of this. If somebody gets out of hand, it's the chair's prerogative to maintain decorum. So I'm not too concerned. We're in the county of Newell, and people respect each other. So welcome here. This is not a debate; it's a question period. But we certainly are pleased for the conversation that can happen here this evening. I will, just by way of further brief report, say that we were in Edmonton 2 weeks ago at the Rural Municipalities Association, and I think we had good opportunity there to raise concerns that have come to our table from local residents, and appreciate the fact that we were able to speak to people at the next level of government, and that's an opportunity that we take seriously, and we appreciated the opportunity to raise some questions that were of concern. So with that, this is your time. It's called question period. As I said, we do this on a regular basis. So if anybody would like to speak, I have questions, I would invite you to come and take a chair. These are comfortable chairs. The mic's on when the light is on, so the best way to turn the light on is to press the button. So somebody can, sure, come on up, Mike. And we welcome you to come up and ask questions, and look forward to your
Well, you mentioned potable water. I think that's the best thing that ever happened to the county. That we spent a lot of time trying to have a good potable water in the house. I got a question. I'm wondering if you guys have a policy with the Eastern Irrigation District for directing water to the drainage system away from the roads and all that.
in particular this time of the year with the snow that we've had.
Well, didn't you have one in the past?
Yes, there is a drainage, a joint county EID drainage project or program where they go through the communities to improve drainage and work together on that. But I'm probably not the best person to talk about the details of that. Pardon me? Yeah, if you've got questions about that, Mark can speak to that, or Matt, we'll respond. So go ahead. What are you thinking?
Okay. I farm on Northwest 291312. That's east of Lake Newell, about 4 miles or so. I've been there for 25 years, and there hasn't been a ditch along the county road, and all that water drains into my property, which does not have any drainage on it, and I've got to pump water off that property of mine, and so does Leonard Korthowski, and I think Alex the same way. And last year when they put the Scott project in, they pipelined it, and the EID said they would put a drain alongside the county road so that water would drain into the spillways. And the EID said that the county would not go for that drain. Now, I don't know if you know anything about it, or Neil, do you know anything about it? Okay, Mark.
Are you familiar with that situation?
Okay, so the matter has not been before council. What administrations between the Eastern Irrigation District and myself have been dealing with is how we adequately fit a ditch in. The road in question is actually on a high ridge between the parcels of land, correct? So technically a road ditch never has been there as far as I know since the road was constructed, which is obviously well before probably my birth even. With that, there was a EID canal delivery that was in place, as Michael has described, and that got pipelined. So in essence, that took away the opportunity for the private landowner to pump water from their property and divert it away. That said, we've never needed a ditch on the county's behalf. For what watershed is there comes off of the road, it's minimal compared to everything else in the catchment area. We've been working with the EID to determine how that can be best fit. When a ditch is to be constructed, its true nature is only to collect the watershed from the road surface. It's not to collect and take water away from surrounding lands or anything of the sorts. More and more government is getting drawn into trying to improve the land for the landowners and whatnot, recognizing we're within an irrigation district, so flood waters and stuff have typically been directed to roadside ditches, which that's not the typical practice anywhere else, but it's addressed. So with the lack of that ditch being present, it's a matter of how can you accommodate something in the government road allowance. Observation is that we don't need a roadside ditch because we don't really have a majority or need for it to collect water. Working with the Eastern Irrigation District, they said that they would take over the ditch if we would facilitate it within the road allowance and call it irrigation works. That's fine. I've been working with legal to get an agreement in place so that we can get that signed off, because all road allowances are vested in the Crown, which is the province of Alberta. They're not owned by the County of Newell. We are the manager of roads on the province's behalf. That draft is with me. I've shared that with staff as of yesterday at the Eastern Irrigation District. We're definitely going to have to get feedback on what language is acceptable and amicable to both parties on that, including what responsibilities lie and where. When I get to that state that we found to be reasonable, I think it's only prudent that council has an opportunity to see that language and determine whether you're interested in facilitating private infrastructure in a government road allowance and whether those terms and conditions are reasonable. That's where I'm at with it.
For clarification, by private infrastructure, you mean the EID drainage adjacent to the road, which there are some of those around, eh?
There are some of those around, yes. And then trying to make that fit and how does it fit with other partnerships that we have with the irrigation district where we're combining ditches for other purposes right now. The other thing that's cautionary in this is the pumping of water from private lands into roadside ditches. Through Alberta Environment Parks, there are rules on wetlands, there are rules on water diversion. Acquiring temporary diversion licenses is something that a person has to do. And those are some of the things that may not be well known by landowners, but that is a requirement of Alberta Environment, and being a right arm extension of the province, that is part of what we need to consider and what we're allowing to happen. Furthermore, with that, it's a matter of what the impact is to downstream users. Now, whether that was happening previously or not, Eastern Irrigation District has to be willing to accept the water. The downstream users also have to be willing to accept it so that there's no negative impact upon their land. So there's a few things in that we have to consider on council's behalf. And if there ever was a day when the province were to take over all of the roads from all of the municipalities again, it's expected that everything falls in line with how they would have managed the property. So a license to occupy by the Eastern Irrigation District lands within a government road allowance only seems reasonable from legal's perspective, and that's how it would be facilitated. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
So are you saying that if there's a ditch put in there, we won't be allowed to pump the water off our land, or what?
It is the landowner's responsibility to acquire a temporary diversion license for any water that gets pumped off of their land. If it's going to be the Eastern Irrigation District's infrastructure, it would be subject to their approval to receive that water and at a flow rate acceptable to them. Okay.
Oh yeah, I was aware of that permit. So is the EID going to put a drain along that county road, or are you going to work together with that, or what? I've got some pictures here this spring where the water's coming over the county road, and there's a foot-deep rut in this road that we use all the time, our residents use all the time. I've got pictures of here, and day before that, the water was coming over the road because there's no drain ditch there to take care of that county snow that's coming off there. And now that there's no drain ditch there, it's all flat draining towards the EID road. So that's another good reason to have a spillway in there, you know. I don't appreciate the water coming to my land. That's my source of living is farming, and I can't get out there if there's a leak out there. And there's a lot of water that drains off the EID. We're bordering, Leonard Krotowski and myself are bordering the Eastern Irrigation land, and they said they will not put a berm or anything like that over there. So they're trying to help us out by possibly allowing us to, well, I don't know, in the past maybe, to pump into their drain system. But now that we can't pump into their drain, there's a pipeline there. They will not allow us to pump into their pipeline, even though it's right at the end of the pipeline. And we could possibly do that because we could screen that water that's going in there, but they said emphatically that they cannot do that.
My understanding is that there is a design by the Eastern Irrigation District, so it's a matter of just getting the agreement in place for council's information.
Okay, so it sounds like there's progress in the positive direction. Just for my interest here, what's the length of the ditch that we're talking about here?
Sorry, I can't.
What is the length of ditch that we're talking about here roughly? I mean,
It's a half a mile, another quarter mile, 3/4 of a mile maybe.
So 1,000 meters maybe?
Okay, it's not a...
The slope is there. It's the ditch that we were asking for. It's on the east side where the pipeline was and where the ditch was, because it's a high spot, and it's a natural drain. It has to be surveyed out, and it's there. The slope is there for it because the Eastern Irrigation District ran that way.
Yeah, and if I have this right, the problem basically emerged as a result of the pipeline project that went in.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The problem exists partly because of the installation of the pipeline delivery system that the EID put in, or is it a problem that's been?
No,
there
the
historically?
problem's been there for 30 years.
Okay. Oh, but there used to be a bit of a
Yeah.
ditch to pump into.
There still is a partial ditch there,
okay.
you know, but it doesn't drain the water.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we're on track to try to be part of a solution, and that's important to us too. So thanks, Mark, and thanks for the question. Sure. Put your mic on. You're welcome to. Yep.
Okay. I want to ask the county where their position is on burning alfalfa seed fields. As you probably read in the Brooks Bulletin here, the Alfalfa Seed Council had or Alfalfa Seed Association had their meeting, and they're eliminating the use of Matador and Silencer in chemicals that we could use on pests. And in the past, we've burnt our fields, and it takes care of a lot of weed problems. It takes care of the pest problems, and I have to spray probably a third, or if not half, as much less than I would if I didn't burn these fields. I'm just wondering where your policy is on that this year, or I guess it's conducive to the weather, I guess, eh?
I'm sure it would hinge on that if we. Todd, do you have a perspective on that, or Matt?
Yeah, I think the tricky part would be to speak to the, I can't speak to the fire permitting, but that, I know Tilly's about the last ones that have been utilizing fire in the spring, or Tilly area. I think Rosemary had some Rosemary area had some problems with some resistant bugs, and they were contemplating going back to that practice as well. So I think there is value in that practice. It's, I don't want to call it dangerous, but you have to be very mindful and manage that fire in its extremes.
Okay, thanks. Mark, you've got some comments?
Yeah, just furthermore to that, I believe, can't speak for sure, but traffic movement is one of the things that would be the responsibility of whoever the burner is, that if there's smoking out a road and visibility is restricted, whatever happens in that, I don't know how that liability is covered if there was ever a motor vehicle accident or something, but I don't think that would be the responsibility of the county. It would be a responsibility of the burner. And I think that's where it sits from fire chief's perspective anyway, but that's just my opinion of it.
But I do believe we still issue permits, burn permits for and as I think you indicated too, if it's exceedingly dry or windy, there are concerns that might override an approval, but we do still issue burn permits in specific situations. So I think that's where we're at. Kelly?
I just wanted to ask, have you had a bad experience that you wanted to share?
I guess I did in the past once. I burnt around a well, burnt around maybe 30 feet around this well, but I don't know if it was my problem, but there was a gas leak in this little green hut, and that we weren't aware of. And I don't know if it's so much my problem as it was the company that was running the well, the gas well.
So from the county perspective, though, you've not had an issue? That's what I'm asking.
Oh, no, I haven't in the past. We have a 1,000-gallon water truck with a fire hose on it, and tractors ready. I'm as cautious as I can be, and I sure don't want to run away. And there's times if I can't burn, I won't burn. That's just the way it is.
Do you take out burn permits?
Well, of course.
Yep. Awesome. I just wanted to check with you. I was just making sure that, not that you were getting the permit, but more so that you were having a decent experience through the county process.
Oh, yes. No.
Good.
I have been. One more question. While I'm here, I know he's coming back and forth.
Absolutely.
As far as what you're talking about, quality of water that we pump into the drain, into the drain, like where we're going to be pumping from, there's no cattle. There's nothing like that around us. No cattle being fed there or near, on our quarters. So that shouldn't be an issue, would it be, as far as pumping water? I guess that's up into Environment Canada or whoever. And another question, what is, how long can these ranchers or farmers haul manure on their land? How long do they have before they have to plow that under or get rid of that manure? Does anybody know?
I think is it 48 hours or?
Yeah, the typical guidelines under AOPA is incorporated within 48 hours. AOPA is the Agricultural Operations Practices Act. There's some times where you can get written approval from the Natural Resources Conservation Board, which is the NRCB. They're the governing body for that AOPA. So you can get exemptions. So if you're spreading manure on frozen ground and you're needing to do that for soil erosion concerns or something like that, you can get exemptions. If your feedlot is too full and you've met with the NRCB and they've allowed you, they've come out and they've done an inspection and determined the risk of spreading that manure on frozen ground, then you can get exemptions where you don't have to work it in right away. But the typical is 48 hours.
On that exemption, do you know how long they have for that?
The inspector from the NRCB is a local guy to like maybe Carmangay, Lethbridge area. When he comes up, he works directly with the landowner. We don't have any involvement. So it would be, it would be between that inspector and the landowner.
Okay. Thanks. Mark, did you have another comment?
Yeah, just with water quality, I can't actually speak to that one. Temporary diversion license is all subject to Alberta Environment Terms Conditions. I'm not aware of anything of water quality issue. It's quantity, and then whatever they determine. If you really want to get into the realm of things, you're potentially talking about a wetland, and that gets to be a real sticky situation. So it doesn't matter whether a wetland has water in it 365 days a year. I think it's classified as just under a few hours, and then it's a whole bunch of different vegetation, aquatics, and everything on how they value wetlands. And landowners need to be aware of that themselves, because anything that they do on their property is subject to Alberta Environment's approval on that.
I think you were talking about pumping water off farmland, right?
That's correct, yeah. We've been farming this land forever, and there is no cattails or any kind of trees or anything on this land. It's all farmable land.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. More questions? Who's next? Mrs. Bency. Oh, Jane, come on up.
Question I got, or the reason I come here tonight.
Ian, lean into that thing a little bit. It'll help everybody. Thanks. Yeah.
All right. The reason I come here tonight is to ask you guys questions about these new land use bylaws that are being proposed in the community and how it's going to affect people, especially people in small hamlets and stuff. And I talked with Mark here a couple of weeks ago, probably for 2 hours. And I had a few ideas on that I handed over to him. I don't know if he's brought them forward to you guys or not. But I really think when the county or the government, it doesn't matter if it's a provincial government, the federal government, whatever, when we start talking about restricting what people can have on their property that they've had for, like I have a neighbor that's got small acreage, and he's been raising bottled calves and then selling them and stuff. It'd be a huge effect on them, and it doesn't bother anybody in the community. But I also can see where somebody brings something into community, into one of these acreage development places, and I'm pretty sure I know where this come from, but I won't say where it come from. But anyways, I can see where that could be an issue, right? But my answer to that is when these properties are zoned residential, or residential commercial, it doesn't matter what they're zoned really, but it instead of making a bylaw telling people what they can raise and what they can't raise on that property, make that property a bylaw that when the buyer, the intended buyer buys that property, it's right in the paper, you cannot have any kind of livestock on there other than a cat or a dog. Because then they come and they know that. So if they're looking for something where they can have a couple of sheep or a horse or, you know, whatever on there, they know that they have to look for a property that's designated for that purpose, right? Rather than saying, well, you can't have that once the property is already purchased. Because to me, once that property is already purchased and that wasn't put out by the real estate owner or the person that sold that land, I know if it was me buying that land, we'd be in court. And the reason we'd be in court is because they misrepresented a piece of land that I purchased, right? Because that should have been, and we can have in fact, I could argue with my wife over this. Maybe the purchaser should look into it further. But the fact of the matter is, most of us that grew up in this country, we have the knowledge to do that, right? But we're in a situation now where we're getting people from all over the world, right? And they think because they buy that 2 acres, they got a farm, right? And that wasn't the case. It's not the case. So to me, rather than taking people, like I know my neighbor, I know he's not here, but I'm going to speak for him. Not that I ask him permission or nothing, but I'm going to speak for him anyhow, because that'd be a huge effect on that guy. All these little acres you see around the country where somebody's got, they started off, they got 2 or 3 acres and they got 4 or 5 horses there. Well, there should be a limit to that, maybe what you can put on there, but that needs to be put when the land is sold, not 20 years after or 15 years after, because that's just wrong. And that's like me coming to your house and saying, well, you can't plant that tree there. And it makes me think, and you guys might think I'm out to lunch here, but there's been talk with our prime minister and things about this 2030 agenda and stuff and control and stuff. And it makes me think that this could be part of that, the start of a control thing, right? And I don't think we want that in our community. I think we want our community to be open and free and to respect your neighbor and love your neighbor, right? Rather than to restrict your neighbor, okay? So anyways, I think what I would like to see is more of a bylaws where land is designated for certain uses, not. And then as you purchase that, and anybody that's already into the situation, like my neighbor there, he's got to be grandfathered to do what he's been doing. He's been doing it for 15 years, right? And nobody ever said he couldn't do it.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, do you have a comment, Kelly?
Yeah, I just want to, I totally hear what you're saying, and I want you to understand that it's on a complaint basis. That's the way the county operates.
Yeah.
So if we're getting along with our neighbors, if our neighbors are content with how we're operating, whether we're taking the animal refuse out or not, as long as we're getting along with our neighbors, the county's not coming knocking.
Okay.
Just so you know, we've never come knocking. That was one of the big learnings when I first came to county council. Well, it says right here in black and white that I shouldn't be doing this, but nobody has said that I couldn't, or that I was wrong. So nobody has come knocking, and we don't have any intention of changing that type of service delivery.
Well, that's good to hear. And then when I talked to Mark too, another thing was on these little projects like this, what do they do with their manure? And I actually have a solution for that too, is composting. The town already has a compost thing going on. There's no reason why the county couldn't find, between the county and the EID and the town, couldn't find a chunk of land that's off a waste so there's no smell or something as a dump post for this manure stuff that these guys are not getting rid of. because as far as I'm concerned, the county could make money off of that. Because you compost that long enough till it actually becomes viable fertilizer, put it in a 20-pound bag, and turn around and sell it, right? I mean, there could be money made off of that. So I think as far as that part goes, if that ever becomes a situation or a question, that's one way of looking at it.
Thanks. Neil, did you have a comment? Thanks.
Yeah, what I really agree with you. There's a ton of misrepresentation out there when people, the realtor is going to tell you can only have 2 horses or 1 or 5 chickens. And there should be some kind of mechanism out there that when the land trades hands, the person knows exactly what they're getting. And I'm actually going to be right in the heart of all this if this goes through, because my area's out from your place. And when you drive home, you're going to go drive by 15 infractions, just like I am.
Yeah.
And none of those people knew what they were getting into, and they've been doing it for years. And it's more like if you just grandfather, you might as well do nothing, because we got to get some information out there, and owner shouldn't have to be where. Like, it should be a caveat on the title or something, because that's the most important thing of all you said, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. The owner, as he's buying that, should know.
It's misrepresentation. Just like I should know what I can put on my place, yeah. And the rules have all been out there forever.
Yeah.
Like, people have been buying stuff that was zoned for the wrong number of animals and increasing it, just like Lynette was telling me. The rules are already there, just nobody's been paying any attention.
Yeah.
And I really don't like this complaint-only basis, because it's complaint-only, but you don't have to tell them who you are.
Yeah.
Which is really, really, really unfair. If I want to complain on you, I better write my name down. And
I agree with that 100%, Neil. I think that's where I think that this should be on a purchase thing. It should be totally up to the person selling the property and the person representing that. That's the realtor representing the property, to have this all out in the open right from the get-go. Because otherwise, it's misrepresentation, and I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
And one more question I had to know is these solar panels. Okay. I would like to know the input cost of building these solar panels compared to what they're actually producing. Because I got a couple of friends from California, and they tell me that as soon as the government quit subsidizing them, they went bankrupt. And so I just wonder how much taxpayers' dollars is going into these solar panels and how much power they're actually producing. Those solar panels that are out here on Neil's land and High Ash's land and the ones that were there from before, could they power this building by themselves?
Not at night.
What's that?
Not at night, no. Neil, well, you've got a comment on that.
Not during a snowstorm either. No. You know, so it makes me wonder. I mean, they're pushing it, and if it actually worked, it's a good idea. I'm not saying it's not, but there's also the fact is, are the taxpayers putting a lot of money out paying for this stuff, and are we getting any return on it really? Because that's a question I want to ask. I had a guy in my yard tell me that he lives beside a section of solar panels in California, and he said when they quit subsidizing them, the company went broke, and he said, no, it's just a mess, it's just a wasteland. Mm-hmm. And he also said it kills a lot of birds. Mm-hmm. Because he said the heat down there coming off them solar panels, he said there were a full section of solar panels, and he said the migratory birds flew over there, and he said in the heat of the summer, when if there's birds flying over there, it was so big, they didn't make it out the other side because it disintegrated their wings. Interesting. So just a couple of questions about them I'd like to know the answer to. And one, are they actually feasible? Because to me, everything needs to have some common sense to it. It needs to be feasible. If it's not feasible, there's nobody sitting here that would invest a bunch of money in something and figure out afterwards that, oh, we lost 50% and keep doing it.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Neil has some comments, and then I have a comment to that too, actually.
Yeah, being that I live on one, I've gotten to know Elemental Energy owners fairly well. It's a family. They get older guys my age, and he's got a few sons and a daughter, and they made their money in Blackcomb, and they went into renewable energy. They've got it scattered right across Canada. And on the first project out there, it was heavily subsidized as 70 acres, the old Molnar place.
Yeah.
That took in a lot of government money. The last section on Hyashes in my place had no government money put into it. And these guys are tickled pink with the money that they're making. And
Okay.
if you look at, I'm doing okay on it. Matt could give you a number from the county that would just knock your socks off. Well, I used to pay $3,000 a year, and now it's, I'm going to say over 200,000 at least, just on the quarter that I'm on. Taxes to the county, back to the community. But as far as the economics go, I've asked Devin and his manager, a guy called Dan Eaton. We've had those people in here because we got to settle that question too. As we go on, we don't want to set up a bunch of uneconomical stuff that's going to go down and just turn it to junk. But the best information we have gotten so far, and I've gotten it personally from an owner, it is that, yeah, they're tickled pink. They're doing another one in Medicine Hat, another one in Innisfail, stringing them out wherever they can get ground to put it in. And they wouldn't do that unless there was a payback on there.
Yeah.
So we've never had, I don't know, we've tried too to get somebody to come in and just show us a regular, just like a regular balance sheet, as if you're growing a crop of hay or something like that. Here, I put in $50 and $10 for water, and I sold it for $400, so I made $300. That's pretty simple thinking. But they always kind of seem to, we've never had that direct answer like that. It's always beating around the bush for whatever reason, but.
Yeah. See, that's the thing is, can you get a direct answer on that?
Well, you can't get a direct answer out of hardly anybody when you ask them how much money they make, because nobody wants to tell you.
See, that would be my question. Are we getting a direct answer, or are we just getting that?
Well, and I think, as Neil said, I mean, we're working to try to get better information on the bottom line on this stuff too, and also there have been, I think, legitimate concerns around who cleans up at the end, and if the companies go sideways. I will say that was one of the things on our agenda in Edmonton 2 weeks ago. We raised that with the government, and I think they hear what our concerns, and those are concerns that are held across the province with municipalities, all the rural municipalities. And our effort isn't to kill something that's economical and sustainable, but it is as you're concerned that we don't establish something that comes back to bite us in the future or doesn't have the life that it's being estimated to have. And those are questions that it's not easy to get to the bottom of, but I think RMA is doing some good work to try to figure that out for us, because some of it is being driven by federal carbon tax issues with the federal government, and we don't know where that'll go. So
Yeah, we all know the federal government doesn't care whether we lose money or not. So.
Yeah, we'll leave that for a bit. But Neil, did you have another comment, and then Mark?
Well, just I'm the big solar proponent on this council because it's done me. I've seen the good that it can do, and it puts our council. It's going to be one of the hardest things we have to decide, because if you were to see the numbers we saw as far as potential tax increases, it's in the millions and millions and millions of dollars for these solar farms going on ground that makes absolutely nothing. What's 1 acre of prairie net back? $20. It's almost impossible not to become somewhat involved in them, because it's a huge win for our county in a million ways. But we could understand. I could understand that. I went through it where I probably got 50 neighbors and 49 of them signed a petition to stop the solar farm on my place, which isn't too bad after you get used to it. But we are working on it as hard as we can, and we're looking at both sides. We're bringing in the most anti-solar person you could get, We're bringing in experts from Calgary. We're not done yet because we want to get this right. But we're also dealing with probably the biggest money decision that this council will ever make if we chose to really get aggressive and then run solar out or go that far. You're talking 20, 30, 40 million dollars over the course. More than that, I'm going to say hundreds of millions over 20 years. So that's, any comments? I would personally would love to hear them.
I've got Mark and then go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just for people in the gallery and people that are online for us, I think it's only fair to speak more to the animal control bylaw and what we spoke about at question period earlier today, that the survey went out to everyone in the county to comment on their, overwhelming response. 150 surveys were submitted. Like, you guys sitting in this room today is overwhelming because generally the chairs are empty. That's what I'm used to in my 21 years of government. I've hosted numerous open houses where nobody comes out to it, but as soon as the equipment shows up in front of their house, that's when they want to start barking at you. I've probably eaten more donuts than most people in the room have because you just can't leave a dozen donuts sitting on the counter because nobody showed up to eat them. But the animal control bylaw, it's all about finding what you and your neighbors are willing to tolerate. And we're a rural municipality, but we have urban components. We have the hamlets of Tilly, Rolling Hills, Scandia, Patricia, and people want to have somewhat of a rural lifestyle within that. But that doesn't mean that the people living in that urban environment necessarily want to welcome a rural lifestyle into the urban environment. Some people do, others don't. Some of you will also know that urban dwellers are moving out to try to get to the rural lifestyle, and then they don't seem to have a tolerance for the rural lifestyle. They don't think your equipment should be running until 2 o'clock in the morning as you're trying to get your crops off to feed the world. They're trying to sleep because they're trying to go to work at 8 a.m. in the morning until 5 and then come home and have quiet enjoyment. But you're running your equipment 24 hours a day trying to make your livelihood as well. And it's trying to find that balance and that understanding about how the community as a whole works. And that's why I say this isn't a matter of the city of Brooks and County Newell. This is Newell already has urban areas. We also have multi-lot residential subdivisions. Some of them only have a quarter acre or a half acre of land. Others, out towards Zorb's place, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 acres of land. It makes a very big difference on what people can do. And then, furthermore, it's what people actually have done to research and understand how to raise those animals and how to be responsible. If I can use Mr. Zorb as an example, you're a sheep farmer. If somebody came in and had a small flock on their parcel of land adjacent to you, and some disease or something set in, and all of a sudden it took out your flock, it's got to be managed somehow. And with that, there's premises identification number. I don't think a lot of people in the urban setting understand those things yet, and it's bringing that awareness to have those numbers and what is right. And in this process, I've learned that you can raise more animals on a parcel of land than what's suggested in the proposed changes of the bylaw. That feedback from the surveys and stuff is what I have to bring up for council, and they have to ultimately make a decision. There might be further direction where we have to go back to the community, but that's really where we're at. We need time to compile that information, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get through 150 surveys. So, thank you.
I'm pretty confident we'll find the balance working together with people, so it'll work itself out. And thanks. Mike, you wanted to comment?
Gee, I hope the county doesn't bring a bylaw to stop me from farming at 2 o'clock in the morning. Neil, a question to you. Like, do these companies have to put up a bond for cleanup or anything like that?
No, they don't. The difference between a solar company and an oil and gas company is that the oil and gas company here protected through the government as far as cleanup goes. I signed about a 25-page contract with them There's a clause in there that says that they have to clean up, but there's no bond. And on my place, to be quite honest with you, it was my business to take a chance on that, and I chose to do that. They were good salesmen. Maybe they'll stiff me for the whole works in the end, but that was my call.
Okay. Oh, I was going to suggest we move on.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say what he was going to say too. We went over that at RMA. Like the big thing with the solar is that there's no government guaranteed cleanup at the end like there is with the Orphan Well Fund.
Yeah.
That's a big concern with every county in southern Alberta anyway.
I've got one more question, and it's more directed to Mr. Shields in regards to the chemicals that the federal government disallowed. I don't know what the company or what the people are.
Mike, can I suggest we hold that till a little later?
Okay.
And I think Martin's.
Well, I've got a chance. He's here, so I want to speak to this because it pertains
it'll
to
happen.
the
It's
whole
just-
Western Canada is what this does.
No, and
what
I'm
the
not trying
government's doing here.
to try to quiet you. We'll just get through the order here, and we'll stay as long as we need to. Thanks. Mrs. Bensi, go ahead.
Okay, now I feel a little bad.
Oh, you shouldn't. Welcome.
Okay, so my remarks are about the animal control bylaw and the changes.
Could you just introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. My name is Mary Lou Bensi, and I live in Tilly, or close to Tilly, on an acreage with animals. Anyway, so I have just some remarks here. So when the survey came out, or when I first found out about this, the bylaw changes online, there was no indication as to why the changes were going to happen or were being considered. There was nothing there about complaints. There was nothing there about, like, I did not know that you just work on a complaint basis. I don't know why this came out of the blue to me. Anyways, and so when some surveys were submitted, apparently, then there was some questions and answers online, which I read. It was about 2 weeks later. Then I found out about some complaints. So it's like, well, that kind of made a difference on how I would respond on my survey. So I'm just saying that this wasn't kind of in the right order, I guess you'd say. The survey went out, but then the information as to why it went out or what the problems were, or why it was changing, weren't articulated. In the questions and answers, they were quite vague, and it seemed to me that some of them were actually non-answers because alignment with another county doesn't sound like a good thing. Why shouldn't we be unique? Why are we adopting something that another county adopted? We don't have that problem, but we'll go change it anyways. Doesn't make sense to me. It's just me. Okay, and some of the survey questions were absolutely confusing. Some of them actually seem to be designed to, like, skew data. I know when you put through these kinds of surveys with statistical algorithms, you can actually skew the data with a question that is redundant, or a question that is vague, or a question that is kind of designed to skew the numbers. And question 2 was actually the one that I was really estranged about. So some of the complaints were about noise, apparently. And on the survey, I'm asked to say, we'll just increase the number of dogs. And I'm thinking, okay, well, let's increase the number of rabbits. They don't make noise. I mean, why would you increase the number of dogs? If every house in Tilly had 4 dogs, I can't imagine the pandemonium that would be there. Okay, so that's just weird to me that you would even ask that, being the complaint was about noise. Okay, so then some more information was it one complaint, noise, for example, against 100 properties? So, or was it 100 complaints about one property? And this is very important. So that would also change my view of things in my answers. And then I'm thinking about what constitutes public participation. So is there a percentage of the population that is a requirement to satisfy public participation? So 0 people sent in a survey, 0. Do you just go ahead and pass those laws then, based on nobody cared? Or do you go back to the drawing board and try to get at least a certain percentage of the population to engage? I don't know how it works. I don't know what your agendas are. I've never been in public office. I do not know. But I would think that if no one responds, and you've sent out letters and you've sent out, you've posted it online and whatnot, and there's 0 participation, I would think that on something like changing a bylaw, you need to go back to the drawing board and you need to get that, whether it's cold calling people, whether it's knocking on doors, whatever it is. I know manpower, I get it, but something has to happen that you get that participation, because I was reading, I've been watching. Anyways, yeah, if you don't have it, I don't know how you can just arbitrarily make a bylaw. And we hired you to do that. I mean, we voted for you guys to make sure the public was aware of what was going on. So if you're just putting it up there and nobody responds and you shrug your shoulders and say, well, we'll make the bylaw anyways, it doesn't work. Anyway, so there's no minimum amount of engagement. I don't know if you make the thing. I spent a lot of evenings watching the council meetings on YouTube, because I have no life. And so this is what I come up with, and that's the whole animal bylaw is actually more about controlling people than it is about animals. There's no real interest here about controlling animals. Just recently, there was the feral cat problem that was brought up by a bunch of people in acreages, the very same acreages that we want to restrict what they can have on their land. Came up with I thought, a very brilliant solution to catch and spay, neuter, and release these animals, these cats. And we have a volunteer group that's willing to do that. And apparently it's $5,000. So, I mean, if we're doing so well on solar, why aren't we throwing $5,000 a year at this? Okay, fine. So it's on a complaint basis. Bantry Bay is complaining. I don't live there. This is not about me. Throw $5,000 at it. Get as many done as you can. Next year, there's $5,000. No volunteers? Fine. Keep it in the kitty. There's volunteers, and it's at Emoto Acres. They're having a big problem because people are dumping their cats out there. Throw $5,000 at it. I don't know what the problem is. Anyways, that's my solution for that. So I wrote this in like 2 minutes after work. So
Do you have
yeah,
some specific questions for us?
Well, the specific question is actually, how does the public participation work? If there is none, what happens?
Matt, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, actually, more often than not, in the past, it has been none. Like, it's been absolutely like 0 kind of a thing. And in that case, by default, it goes to the elected representatives to make the best decision they can based on conversations they've had, hopefully at the coffee shop with neighbors, relying on their experience. A lot of effort goes into trying to tease out some public participation. We haven't found a smoking gun on it, right? Whether you hold a session after hours, during hours, regularly scheduled surveys, and we appreciate the feedback on the surveys. It's pretty tough to design a survey that gets to the crux and is concise and gives everybody the information they need to answer it. So that's always something that we're working towards improving. But the surveys are convenient. Folks can access them. They're by no means perfect. Issues that folks care about, animal control bylaw, we've had 150 some odd responses. We've had a tax incentive bylaw out for public participation too, and we got less than 20 responses on that one. So, population of 7,500, it's hard to really tease out any meaningful inferences from those results, but they are considered by council in their ultimate decisions. But I guess to answer your question directly, no, there isn't any percent cutoff that we say, well, we got 0, so we got to keep going until we get 5, 10, 15% kind of a thing.
I will say, though, that in relation to the animal control bylaw, there have been responses, and we will be considering those very seriously before changes are made. And so we appreciate the responses that have come in, and the challenge is for people to respond to things they're concerned about. Roberta, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to share that we have put a communications position in the budget this year because we know that's a focus and we want to encourage participation. So I would just encourage everybody to watch and respond to things about how you would like to be communicated with, because we really have put a lot of effort since about 2016, 2017, invested in different methods and ways that we can communicate and get engagement. So it's really encouraging that there's an interest. So I would just ask that everybody watch. That communications position will be here shortly, and that will be that position's focus, is to make sure that council hears the voice of the citizens.
Okay. Thank you.
Kelly? Oh, sorry.
And might I add, Mrs. Bensi or anybody else in the audience, that our individual phone numbers are on the website, and we welcome the telephone call. I've had phone calls at 8 o'clock on Sunday night, and apology on the phone. I said, no, we're open 24/7. So that's just my attitude about it. I appreciate the feedback anytime, whether you're from Division 6 or Division 92. Okay.
Holly, please, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention briefly about the animal bylaw. When it came before us, it was brought for bylaw officers who deal with these problems. But for someone like myself, I live on a ranch. I think they should have animals. That's just how it is, right? So I really told them, please give feedback. I don't live in a hamlet. I can't say how hamlet people feel, right? So feedback is so important because I can't make that decision. It's not my life, right? So I need that feedback. There's no intention at that point in time to take things away from people, I don't think. It was an attempt by someone to go, what is fair to everyone? And we're looking for feedback because it's a tough balance, and we don't know what necessarily is the right thing to. We're trying to get that answer from people.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Adina, please.
Well, I just wanted to mention too that there's always been an animal control bylaw, and there was always a chicken bylaw, and so the attempt was being made to take the two and make one, and the only part of the bylaw that was changing was somebody that's living on a parcel of land less than 2 acres. So if you live on less than 2 acres, then yes, you are being directly affected by this. But if you live on more than 2 acres, then you are under the same bylaws which you've always been under.
Really hard on roosters. Anyway, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So I have one small other thing. When you make the bylaws and they are there and you're saying that we have no intention of policing that, you don't have the manpower to police that, obviously, right? So you're not going to go count rabbits and whatever on a complaint basis. That's this council. The next council, I could lose my horses. I could lose my, I don't know, I couldn't. But somebody could. Somebody could say, no, black and white, you don't, you can't have them. Get rid of them, you got 48 hours. It's this council, I know things happen in the county. I drive by infractions too. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's okay because, it doesn't bother anybody. But the next council will. So a bylaw puts it in black and white. So I'm saying if you make it 2 acres, right? Then anybody under 2 acres, I have more than 2 acres, but if anybody under 2 acres, I mean, literally you could go up there and say, oh no, that's too many animals, a little bit of a police state going on. Not this council, for the future.
Well, and I can tell you that I think we're very conscious of exactly that fact, that good intentions aren't reasons to, well, this is okay and we'll just do this. I mean, I think you've hit on the point that's important, that when we're making regulations or bylaws or whatever that the legislation is, it needs to consider the fact that what it is what it is, and you can't count on people just overlooking it. So you have to be careful and appreciate that concern as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Go ahead. Please introduce yourself again, please.
Kevin Harris, I live on the One Tree Road area. And I noticed in the questionnaire or the bylaw summary that you guys sent out about chickens is the reason why I have chickens is I can't say I get free eggs. I get cheaper eggs. I know where they come from. I buy chickens to kill, to eat, right? And I don't have 5,000. You have 15, 20, whatever. But why can't I kill a chicken on my land?
Mark, if you had a quick comment on that.
There's definitely some clarity that needs to be brought forward in the bylaws, because the slaughter of chickens was strictly for the urban chicken bylaw in the hamlets. And I didn't write that original bylaw. I know it's consistent with other urban municipal bylaws. I would have to take the perspective that if somebody's child walked out on the deck and you're next door with an axe slaughtering in your backyard, it might not be the most receptive thing. For you living on an acreage, sure. I've actually been taken to task to say, well, what if it was actually done in a shed where it's not seen and it's not heard? Excellent perspective. For people that are aware of what's required when slaughtering chickens, under the legislation in Alberta, if it's for human consumption, your immediate family has to be the one that consumes it. You cannot give that to your neighbor for consumption. You're not even supposed to have friends over to feast on it. That's not our legislation, that's provincial legislation. So that's the simple thing, is there's some legislation regulations that are trying to be reflected there.
But we're also not riding herd on that.
Right.
We're not, yeah.
Right, but that's why it was written in the bylaw, in the urban environment.
Right, yeah.
The reason why I asked the question is I live in a subdivision, but I have 7 acres. The wording of the questions were confusing, that under 2 acres, yeah. But I live in a subdivision. And I'm not going to be that guy in the front yard with a chop block killing chickens in the front yard.
And I think I spoke to that well too, that on an acreage your size, that's not going to be an issue. It probably needs to be clarified as well, so that it doesn't apply to your situation. Yeah.
But I do live in a cul-de-sac with immediate neighbors. You know what I mean? I'm not out by Jenner or whatever.
No, I understand. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none. Martin, do you want to come up and say a few words, and then, as you've heard, Mr. Dobachuk has some comments or questions as well. So, yeah, take the middle chair. Yeah. Yeah.
He's been bigger than me for a long time. Anyways, thank you. Great to be here tonight. It's one of the things that I like to do is, as you well know, is meet with other levels of government. Last night, we did a community meeting in Nameka, and we had the Reeve, we had the MLA, and we had myself. We had all three of us in that meeting, which sort of can help in the sense because questions can be for a variety of levels of government, and we had all three in the room, which was great to answer a variety of questions. So we do that as much as we can, organizing with the MD of Taber and Taber to do the same thing right away. So appreciate the opportunity to be here and do that kind of meeting with there's people from the public here and answer as many questions as we can. The other side of meetings that I've had, I was at the WID, the Western Irrigation District AGM yesterday. Next week, I'll be at the Bow River Basin, or Bow River Irrigation District, their AGM, met with the ID. Irrigation to me is one of the critical things that I work with. We're in a critical area. I know solar was mentioned in the sense of tax revenue. Vulcan County, for example, 50% of their revenue came from oil and gas, and they're desperate for tax revenue, and they're pushing the biggest solar farm in the country is being built in the county of Vulcan. It's a tax-based issue for them, and that's how that council has pursued that one. There's a lot of different questions about solar, and let's not get into it, or we'll be here all night with that one, I'll tell you. Lots of different versions on what we do with solar. But the municipalities have to look at the alternative revenues with the loss of oil and gas, and so that's a decision you need to make, and a difficult one to make in some of the issues around with it. But irrigation, on the other hand, is going to replace a lot of that oil and gas revenue, or can. There's a reason McCain's is doubling the size of their plant between Lethbridge and Taber. It's $600 million more investment, and that's because the irrigation districts are expanding. When they're paying, companies in the food industry are paying attention to what's happening with irrigation, because they know if there's more land being irrigated, there's more possibilities for growth of different kinds of crops. So as the irrigation districts are pursuing more acreages, whether it's the ID that has a different land base than some, and different water license than some, but they're all pursuing expanding their acreages, all of them. And that's a challenge in some areas more than others. Water rights are an interesting topic. When the mayor of Cochrane says we're out of water and we need to look at irrigation, when I run across another mayor from a community south of Calgary saying we're spending tens of millions of dollars on buying water licenses because we're out of room, maybe we should be looking at the irrigation licenses. I get really concerned. Because irrigation is the future in the sense of more advanced crops, more breaking down the fractionalization, which is happening in two plants being built, one in Strathmore and one in Lethbridge, where they're taking yellow peas, breaking it down to the protein components, because there's a billion people in India that eat that protein. It's a great export crop. So irrigation is a huge part of our growth in this area. And I know, Neely, you know and understand that very well, as you used to be on the ID board. So that's something that I pay a lot of attention to and work with the irrigation districts as well and meet with irrigators as well. So, question you had about chemicals.
Yes, there's, I don't know if you're aware of it, the federal government,
Or you can come on up here.
I'll come up right there. I'll come up. I don't want to.
I'm a bit of a nut about it, but I have a hearing deficiency, so I look after myself.
We all, males always have that. Women always tell us we don't listen. We hear them, we just don't listen.
Well, I don't know if you're aware of that the federal government took away Matador and Silencer The canola industry uses it a lot. I grow hybrid canola, commercial canola, so does everybody in Western Canada. And they're also took away, I'm on a leafcutter bee business that pollinates all this alfalfa seed, and they took another chemical away, the Vapona. And we're scrambling to look for something else that'll work for us. So I want to know what's going on in the federal government with these chemicals that they're getting taken away from us. You just mentioned irrigation, but if the federal government's taking tools away from us, how are we going to produce on this irrigated land?
You mean like fertilizer, 30% reduction?
Yeah,
that
all
one?
that.
Or carbon tax? Yeah, well aware of all of those ones. So we've got some different kinds of issues with the different kinds of chemicals. The one for cutterleaf bees, back in 2020, the labeling on it when it was reviewed was for domestic use. It wasn't labeled for industrial use. So when that came up in the review of it, they said, no, you can't use that anymore for industrial use, which we were using it. So it was mislabeled. The company that had it left enough inventory in this country that's been able to use for this final year, right? And then it's done. What we've got is a regulatory problem with the PMRA, the regulator agency for chemicals. The process to go through that regulatory process, that company will not come back in to try to get it registered because we've got too small a market. They'll do it in the US and we're going to be competing with them. We lose it here because they will not bring it in because the red tape in place is too oppressive to go through. So we've lost that one because of the regulatory process under Parliament. The other ones you're talking about, we're moving into an era. There's two ways that you can look at chemicals for being approved. There's about 2,400 in Canada that could go through a regulatory process. There's risk and harm. We have been based in the agricultural industry in the developed countries as risk. If you drink too much water, that could be a risk to your health, right? I don't know. Well, I'm not going to drink too much water to find out, but it's a risk scenario. But if you move to a hazard base, what has to happen is the chemical company has to prove there is no hazard to that chemical. Now, Europe has been pushing to that direction. We've got bureaucrats in Canada who, as long as I've been there, keep pushing in the conversation to move it to that level of harm versus risk. When you move to that, there's chemical companies say, we're not going to bring it to your country because that is a probability they can't deal with. The Americans are not going there. They're staying at the risk. Europe is moving more and more to the harm for chemicals. That's not good for us. And it's not good that we've got bureaucrats in the Liberal government that they say, and MPs who want to push it to that harm, because they then support the regulatory process that makes it harder to get chemicals approved or to maintain their approval in this country. And that's the problem we've got. We prefer to stay in the risk and want risk, not harm analysis, like the US, our next closest competitor. The problem specifically with the cutterleaf bees is that we've got a very small market here, very small market, and no American company will come back in to go through that regulatory process. We're fighting that. We want that changed so it isn't the regulatory process that keeps them from wanting to come back here. It's brutal. It's hard. Do we know about it? John Barlow, our ag critic next door, we've talked about it. We bring it up committee. I have sat down with the health minister, who it's under health, not under agriculture. That's a challenge in itself with that minister. But I've had that one conversation with him. I'm coming back for another one saying, this is problematic when we have an agriculture over there saying we need to increase by 20 billion our export out of agriculture, yet they put in things that keep it from growing, but actually drive it down. Carbon tax is another example of that. I'm not getting you an answer that you would like, but I'm telling you what the problem we're facing, and we need to fix it.
Something you can take back with you, some of these chemicals we're talking about, yet they could spray them on cucumbers, and that goes into edible products that humans eat. We can't spray them on crops.
Yeah.
That's another one you could take to the Liberals over there.
The spraying, Every grade 2 or 3 kid in Ontario gets a picture of a butterfly or a bee to color because farmers are spraying things on the ground or on the crops and they're killing them all. That's the kind of fight we've got, is that people are under belief that farmers are killing everything, including the bees and the butterflies. It is a massive challenge we've got in the agricultural sector. That spraying is one of them. That's a problem we've got. The urban people in this country don't have a clue where their food comes from for generations. Not a clue. And that's 90% of our population.
Well, I'm in this alfalfa seed industry and canola industry. There's fill pots have honeybees next to my fence line where I spray, but we spray at nighttime where the bees are in their shelters and whatnot. We have to have some responsibility too, because we're concerned about the bees too, not just the native bees, but our own bees and honeybees and leafcutter bees. So, you know, we're being hampered, you know, by quite a bit here in these farmers. We have, our hands are tied. I don't know what else I can say.
Well, hampered is a nice way to say it. Wow. But that's the problem when we have an environmental minister who doesn't understand a clue what fertilizer is and doesn't understand that farmers don't want to buy any more than they have to because it's doggone expensive, and then they want to add taxes to it. Doesn't understand that you're not going to spend more than you have to, and you're going to use it where you need it. Has no clue. And so that's the problem we have, is a lack of understanding at the highest levels on the other side of the floor. They don't know what agriculture is. And our ag minister is a nice person, or she's a real nice person. But last July, when she was touring here, and I've said this story is well known, and she saw a grain plant from top to bottom, roots and everything. And in that discussion, she asked, which part of that plant do the cows eat? You understand the problem we've got?
She likes Quebec and the dairy industry. That's all I got to say about it.
Well, she does protect the dairy industry. There's no doubt about it. But the chemicals is going to be more and more of a challenge unless we're able to change the channel on the bureaucrats that keep proposing harm versus risk. We really have got a problem in a lot of areas, and agriculture is a big one.
Pertaining to this chemical that we use in the canola and alfalfa seed industry, are they looking back at it? Have you given some questions about it, whether or not they'll be able to look into it again? Because there's a lot of false information that they got when they made their decision.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we do in committee and environment, where we spent a lot of time with that, we bring in the experts from the chemical industry, from the ag industry, from the fertilizer industry. We bring them in, and they are excellent at what they propose to us. But when I'm sitting with 2 MPs on the other side in the Liberal caucus who are vegans, they really don't care. They really don't care. They just ignore it. So it's a challenge at times, that what you're dealing with in the sense of who's going to listen to the message they bring. But it's like Fertilizer Canada. There was about 10 of us rural MPs in Western Canada met with Fertilizer Canada. They went through all their information of the value and the rest of it. And we said to them, will you fight with us for the agricultural sector? And they said, no, that's you guys to do it. My answer was to them, you won't be here in 5 years, because these guys will destroy your industry if you let them.
I guess we got to do what they're doing in Holland or in Europe, is elect farmers to the parliament, I guess, and take control of it, eh?
Power to us to do that. Our only problem is with Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto, there's not too many farmers there. So we try to make the voice as strong as we can.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Does anybody from council have questions for Martin or anyone else? If not, go ahead.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Just want to say that we agree with you with regard to the importance and the primary importance to irrigation, particularly for this area. We see it as our biggest opportunity for economic development locally, you know, among other things that are happening. But that's a resource we have in front of us that we need to try to expand. So thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for your availability, Martin. And I want to thank everyone who's attended today or been in attendance online. Appreciate your questions and your interest. And as I've said before, we have a question period at every one of our meetings. Don't hesitate to use that. Either come in to ask questions if that's suitable. But thanks for coming tonight. This was an effort to try to accommodate people's interest in coming in, and we appreciate your input and presence here this evening. So with that, anyone else have anything to add? Council? Yes. We've appreciated your support for irrigation for a long time, so thank you.
Martin, nobody can hear you online if you don't talk into the mic.
You mentioned regional water, and I was the mayor at the time, and regional water was probably one of the best things we ever did in this area, and that took a lot of cooperation from everybody in the area. And it was an example whether it didn't matter where we lived, whether it was Brooks, Lozano, Tilly, which was under boil water order for many years. It didn't matter where we lived. We all saw the value of regional water, and we worked together, and you guys continue to carry on. There's probably an owner of a newspaper who's never forgiven me for giving away the Brooks Water Treatment Plant, but he lives in the county, and he gets the water from it. But it was an example. You mentioned it off the top.
Right.
It's one of the best things that I remember working on jointly in this area,
Right.
and it is a fantastic resource that we all are available for us. So,
Well, and I give a lot of credit to you, Martin, and to the council of the day for moving when you did, because it was an opportune time, about 2010 or 9, 8 or 9, when you moved on that. 5-10 years later, it would have been very difficult to get that done with the kind of funding that was available at the time. So credit to all of the councils involved
everybody
throughout our
in the
region.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of areas across the country that can't believe the kind of service we get and have gotten out of that. It's been a remarkable contribution to everyone's livelihood who took advantage of it.
So thanks for mentioning that earlier.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. With that, we'll adjourn. Thank you. Have a good long weekend, and you're welcome anytime, and keep talking to us. Thanks.